We have here tonight with us the NAACP National President and CEO, Cornell Brooks, Esquire. Would he please come up here now?
Good evening. We find ourselves tonight in the midst of a rather difficult moment. We find ourselves in a set of situations, or rather set of circumstances, and in the midst of a situation not of our choosing. We find ourselves in the middle of a tragedy not of our creation. We find ourselves in a church on an occasion not of our choosing. We find ourselves leaning on our God as a consequence of the loss of life by one of God's children. We find ourselves in this sanctuary at this moment in the midst of prayer because we happen to believe that justice is real, it can be sought, it can be realized, and it is ours for the taking. Justice now, justice in this moment. Michael Brown, as a young man, came up in a community. He came up in a family. A mother who loved him, a father who loved him, a stepfather who loved him, friends who loved him, classmates who loved him. He came up in a community in which there is the presence of the NAACP. I note that because it is a community in which for 60 years there's been an NAACP, and nearby in St. Louis for 100 years there's been an NAACP. That is to say, there are people in this community who understand the meaning, the connotation, the denotation of justice, and they will not give up, they will not give in until we realize the full meaning of justice for this young man. There are leaders here on the ground in this community that I'd just like to lift up and solicit your prayers and solicit a word of appreciation for their hard work during this difficult hour. We have our NAACP board member, John Gaskin, this young brother to my left. The state president, Mary Ratliff. The St. Louis County branch president, Ms. Esther Haywood. The St. Louis City President Adolphus Pruitt, who has been working yeoman's hours to spend time with the family and to advance this investigation. And for my youngest brothers and sisters who are here wondering whether or not your participation, your engagement matters, I note the work of Sister Jasminique Holly, or Jazz Holly, who is the president of the Missouri State Youth College and Youth Division. And we also acknowledge with appreciation the pastor, the Reverend James Stewart, who has made this sanctuary and facility available. We find ourselves tonight in the midst of an unfolding moral drama. We find ourselves tonight in the midst of an as yet unfolding tragedy. in this unfolding moral drama, this as yet unfolding tragedy, the central figures are not public officials. The central figure is not law enforcement. The central figures are not the prominent members of the media. They're not those who have engaged in lawlessness in our streets in the name of a young man who obeyed the law. The central moral figure in this moral drama is a young man by the name of Michael Brown. It's important for us to remember that this young man was the son of a mother, the son of a father, a member of a family, the member of a community. It is important for us to remember that the images on television, the images on social media do not capture the humanity of this young man who lost his life. And so tonight, we're not merely talking about the issue of police brutality writ large and writ abstract. We're talking about a young man. As the father of a 17-year-old, the same age as Trayvon Martin when he was slain, I see this young man like I see my son. That is someone who captured the promise and the potential of his family. And so tonight, we're not talking about an abstract issue. We're not talking about a social justice matter, categorically speaking, abstractly speaking. We're talking about somebody's son. We're talking about the son of our community. And because we're talking about one of our own, whether you are from this community or you've come here from someplace else, if you believe in a good God and you believe that God's children are in fact God's children, and if you believe that God's children are in fact our children, when we talk about Michael Brown, we're talking about our son, our grandson, one of our own. And so we owe it to this young man to seek justice. We owe it to this young man to have a thorough, complete, transparent, accountable investigation conducted by those charged with the responsibility of protecting and serving. We want no more, and we certainly want no less than the truth, unfiltered, unmanufactured. We want the truth, and we want the truth for this family, for this young man, and for this community. We deserve that. In the quest for truth, there are those who find themselves justifiably frustrated. There are those who find themselves this evening angry. There are those who find themselves tonight with a cankerous sore on the soul because they see a young man who did the right things. He went to school, he graduated from high school, he was headed toward college, and they find themselves tonight angry. Now, I wish I could say to you as a fourth-generation ordained minister in the African Methodist Episcopal Church that you should not be angry. I can't say that. I can't say that. We remember all too well the morally confused and ethically befuddled looks on our children's faces when they asked about the Trayvon Martin verdict. And so here we are, this many months later, asking ourselves the same kind of question. How did this happen? How did this take place? And when will justice be reached? So I can't tell you not to be angry. But what I can call upon you to do, and pray that you do, is to translate and transliterate anger into righteous indignation. Turn your anger into action. If you believe that this young man who never got into a fight, who stayed in school and graduated, if you believe that if he lived his life non-violently, we have to conduct a campaign for justice non-violently. It cannot be said that one can tiptoe under the cover of darkness to steal from a quick shop or a convenience store. I want to suggest to you, rather than tiptoe under the cover of darkness to take that which does not belong to you, why not march in broad daylight to the courthouse, to the police department, and take justice in broad daylight, non-violently. To my youngest brothers and sisters, let us be clear. To sneak around under the cover of darkness, to loot, to steal, to burn down your own neighborhood, this does not require courage. Courage is required when you stand up for justice, when you pray for justice, when you struggle for justice. That is what courage is about. Martin Luther King did not live and die that we might steal in the name of justice in the middle of the night. He lived and died that we might seek justice in the middle of the day. To my youngest brothers and sisters, I say to you the same thing I say to my 14-year-old son, Hamilton, and my 17-year-old son, Cornell. We're not asking you to join this justice movement. We're asking you to lead this justice movement. If our youngest brothers and sisters took to social media, tweeted images, and alerted not only Ferguson, not only St. Louis, not only St. Louis County, not only Missouri, not only the United States, but yea, all the world. Why? Because you're taking justice to the uttermost corners of the universe. That is what you're doing. That's what you represent. We are proud of you. We believe in you, but we're calling upon you to stand for justice and to stand in this brother's name and to do that which you do non-violently. Now, there are some who believe this matter of injustice has occurred in a small corner of God's vineyard. It's an isolated incident. It's a moral aberration. But I want to make it clear to you that this seems to be a part of a disturbingly familiar pattern. That is to say, we have young people accused of the most minor of offenses. I note accused, not convicted, accused of the most minor of offenses. These offenses and these young people are met with disproportionate, violent force by those charged with the responsibility of serving and protecting. It's happened in New York. It's happened in Atlanta. It's happened in St. Louis. It's happening all across the United States. And I have to tell you, it's happening, but it must stop. Criminologists talk about a broken windows theory. The notion that small offenses, quality of life crimes, have to be met with overwhelming force. We have to demonstrate to the community that we're in charge and in control. But I want to say to you that this theory is not only untested, it has no basis in data, it has no basis in fact, but what it has led to is decades-long misery in black and brown communities. Police departments that engage the community, that build relationships of trust, that use a community policing model, have young people engaged as participants in justice, not the victims of injustice. And so I say to my friends in law enforcement, there's a different way to go. There's a different path to take. The young men and young women in the community, whether they be named Michael Brown or Jasmine Holly or Jasminique Holly, whatever their names are, they are not the enemy. They are those you have sworn to protect and serve. And the best means to protect the community is to respect the community. I leave you with these words that are over a century old. A relatively young African-American patriot by the name of Frederick Douglass said, those who profess to favor freedom, yet depreciate agitation, are men who want crops without plowing up the ground. They want rain without thunder and lightning. They want the sea without the roar of its mighty waters. There can be no progress without struggle. We tonight will struggle for justice. We will struggle for righteousness. We will struggle for Michael Brown's memory. We will not give up. We will not give in. We will not relent.